Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. All-Star Weekend is pretty much here right now, and so the NBA will be taking a brief pause for the festivities in Indianapolis. And whether you enjoy that or not, we will be talking a little bit about that. But first, we wanted to talk about sort of the fallout from the trade deadline last week. I know we talked in depth last week about what exactly happened at the trade deadline, but now as some time has passed, there's been some trickling of rumors and trades that could have been, or trades that were floated out there. And perhaps the most surprising one was that teams were calling the Los Angeles Lakers about one LeBron James, Sap's favorite NBA player. And one of those teams was the Philadelphia 76ers, and another one of those teams was the Golden State Warriors. And so we're going to talk about, why those teams may have been interested. But I think the big question now, Sap, is what is LeBron's future now? Is he content to stay in LA? Does he want to move? Obviously, there's nothing that happens in the NBA really without LeBron's say-so or approval at this point. So he would have to agree to go to a certain place. He can opt out of his deal this offseason. It's for, I think, $51 million. We know he wants to play with his son, Bronny, but this is the first time that I think teams thought maybe he was a gettable trade asset. And although they were rebuffed, it is interesting that that was a development, Sam.
The Lakers may have put in their minds that he was going to opt out. So with 2 months left in the regular season, and the Lakers kind of right now in the play-in tournament and on the outside looking in terms of being real contenders in the Western Conference, may have said, well, let's try to get some draft capital or some young players in return for LeBron, see where he wants to go. Obviously, you're going to have to run that by him. You just don't trade him without his okay, because he is still the biggest star in the NBA. So that could have been part of it. I think he wants to stay in LA. That's home for him now. It's more about basketball, more than just basketball for LeBron, because it's about branding and the connections he's made in Southern California with his media company, getting into movies. There's so many different things that LeBron is involved with that LA is the perfect place for him. His son Bronny's playing at USC. I don't know if Bronny's going to declare himself eligible for the draft in June. Is he good enough? Is he going to be someone that someone takes in the second round? Maybe some team drafts him in the second round and then decides to trade him to the Lakers, or, whatever the case might be. There's so many different things that could happen. So was it a surprise that teams called for LeBron? No, because again, he can opt out at the end of this year, and he's still one of the 10, 12 best players in the league. On any given night, he can still be the best player in the league. It surprised me that Golden State was there and that the Lakers would even entertain talking to them, because they're in the same conference. I don't think that they would want to just help Golden State win another title. The teams that I threw out there, because we talked about it last week, that maybe, he could be traded. And we did this actually 2 weeks ago before the trade deadline. I was hoping Cleveland. Cleveland right now is second in the Eastern Conference. I think they could match up against the Celtics because of their two great defensive bigs in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. You put LeBron on that roster with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, I think you have a tremendous team that could beat the Celtics in an Eastern Conference final. Plus, the symmetry would be pretty cool, right? Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland, Lakers, ended in Cleveland. Well, that wasn't even rumored out there. The Knicks would be interesting because the Knicks have been irrelevant for so many years. They're a good team, but they've got only so much that they can do with the current roster they have. Philadelphia is interesting because now Embiid's out for probably the rest of the regular season. So exactly what was that going to be all about? And what would you have to give the Lakers to get LeBron? Would it be future draft picks, young players, whatever it would be. But looking at Golden State, would it be draft picks and maybe Jonathan Kuminga? And should the Lakers have done that, figuring Kuminga's really improved this year? And if you get draft capital, you start the rebuild process. But they're in a weird spot, the Lakers. They're never really rebuilding the Lakers. They normally reload. They're either a title contender or not good. They're never in between. I don't know what they are now, though. This could be a case where they're in between.
They don't develop. They're not a developmental franchise. They don't develop players there. In fact, players, once they get traded there, usually flourish in other places. But it's a unique scenario in LA, and I think that trading LeBron James and trying to recoup draft picks and maybe a young player just isn't that appetizing for the Lakers as a franchise or their fan base. Um, when you have LeBron, even if you're not
Can I push
playing,
back on that though, Jet? In terms of the fan base, the fan
sure,
base has
yeah,
never embraced LeBron. I mean, he's to me the greatest player in the history of the sport. They've never really embraced him.
they
Um,
embraced him more after they won a championship,
True,
though.
because now they tied the Celtics for the most championships, but he's nowhere near as popular as Kobe or Magic. Those to me are
Right?
still
No,
the two
no, you,
Lakers that are
of
another
course.
stratosphere, right? I mean, I'm sure there's still Laker fans, probably most Laker fans, who think Kobe was greater than LeBron. I mean, they're
Yeah.
going to put
Oh,
up three
definitely.
different
There's a
statues. So that part, not to push back, that the fan base, I'm sure, would be pissed because okay, maybe they have an outside shot of contending for a title. They
right. I
did
think
get to
it's
the
more
Western
about
Conference
a
Finals,
relevancy thing, Sap.
right?
Like as good as
Exactly.
Jonathan Kuminga maybe will end up being. He's not a name that is going to get you Jazz to be, okay, we're going to build
Right.
around Jonathan Kuminga, and that's the way, for better or for worse, that's the way the Lakers work. They're a star laden organization. If you look up in the rafters, you look in the NBA Hall of Fame and see how many Lakers are in there, and you realize, that's what the franchise is all about, is star players, not developing these guys. It's ready-made star players trying to compete for a
Mm-hmm.
championship. And I think a lot of this too, a lot of teams' inquiries were not just about the Lakers' record this season and their record in the regular season last year before they had a really good run in the playoffs last year. LeBron does the cryptic tweeting thing sometimes, and he tweeted an hourglass about a week and a half ago, right before the trade deadline. And so I think teams were saying, well, does this mean he's running out of patience? Does he want out? So, I think they were inquiring based off of that as well. From the story that I read, when Philadelphia inquired, he called Rob Pelinka and said, "Hey, is LeBron James available?" And he said, "Yeah, is Joel Embiid available?" And that was the end of the conversation.
Sure.
So obviously the Lakers. I have a hard time imagining if they were going to trade LeBron, they would, one, he would have to agree to where he's going, and two, they would want to do it for picks, and they'd want to do it for another star player. It just doesn't make sense for them otherwise. So I don't know what offer could have enticed them. And yeah, there's obviously the aspect like you're saying, Sap, about does he want to play with his son Bronny? If you look at his statistics at USC right now, it would indicate that he's not even close to an NBA level
Mm-hmm.
player. So he might get the Thanasis Antetokounmpo treatment and end up on an NBA roster through pure nepotism, as Giannis's brother has. But as of right now, he doesn't look like he's deserving of a being a draft pick. But LeBron's always said he wants to play with his son. So if that's the ticket that gets LeBron James to come to your franchise, you eat the roster spot and you have LeBron James come to town. So it should be an interesting offseason for the Lakers. Obviously, if they somehow miraculously rally and win the championship this year, LeBron's not going to go anywhere. But I could see him wanting to potentially change sceneries this offseason. But I think the most likely thing is, like you said, Stap, he's comfortable in LA. He probably wants to stay there and finish out his career. Once he won the ring in LA, even though it was in the bubble, I think it took a lot of pressure off of him
Mm-hmm.
he delivered what he said he was going to deliver there. Now he's won a championship at every place he's been.
Right. He's got 4 titles. In all likelihood, he doesn't reach Jordan's 6. I still think he's the greater player. We've had this discussion before. As a pure basketball player, I think he's better than Michael Jordan. I'm not even going to discuss Michael Jordan, the icon. That's a whole other argument. There's never been an athlete, at least in my lifetime, as important to his sport as Michael Jordan. It's not even close. I mean, Tiger Woods in golf, maybe Babe Ruth in baseball, maybe Jackie Robinson in society more than anyone, but that's even bigger than the sport. But Michael Jordan still sells more sneakers than any other player in basketball, and he really hasn't played in 25 years.
Right,
He is
probably
the big,
combined, honestly. Like, probably
right.
sells more than
He's
them combined.
biggest athlete of my lifetime, and that includes Muhammad Ali, who was worldwide because Michael Jordan was also worldwide. The biggest
And
reason the
and
game grew
uh
worldwide was
and
because of
Ty
Michael
Cobb,
Jordan.
right, Sep? He's in your lifetime too.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm that old. Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Stan Musial, all those guys. I loved watching them all. Absolutely, my paisans Joe DiMaggio and Yogi Berra as well.
Sure.
But so
Shoeless
I
Joe,
think
all those guys.
yeah, all those guys. Shoeless Joe should be in the Hall of Fame. But I look at LeBron, and I think if you really had a conversation with him. He doesn't think he's going to catch Jordan with 6. Maybe he gets 5, right? So 5
Well,
against 6 is
yeah, he could,
something.
but not
Whether
on
it's
this, not on
not
this
on this
team.
Laker team, it's going to be difficult. There's 2 teams to me that are better than everyone else in the West, and that's Denver and the Clippers. And then, Minnesota and Oklahoma City are both young teams. Feel a little bit like Sacramento and Memphis last year, maybe a little better than those teams because I think their high-end talent is better. But I don't think they're real title contenders. I think it's the Clippers and Denver, and then whoever wins the West is going to have to beat the Celtics in the finals. It would be a tough task for the Lakers to win the championship. I know they added Dinwiddie, but, okay, that's a bench piece at this point in his career. If he decides to go elsewhere next year, there were always rumors about the Knicks. Cleveland, to me, is still the one that would be appealing because that's a really good roster.
Well,
if Donovan Mitchell stays there,
yeah,
then
that's the question. Is he's a free agent too? So they can't sign everybody. They wouldn't have enough money to sign LeBron and Donovan Mitchell.
true. So now you've got to
they'd
move
have
on
to
from
make some moves.
Darius Garland's probably the guy that goes at that point,
Yep.
unless you want to get rid of one of the big guys, Mobley or
work.
Jared Allen. But Donovan Mitchell, LeBron, a big guy, or 2, or Darius Garland, that's a really good roster. I mean, they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference right now, ahead of Milwaukee. So that would be a place, Philadelphia, to play with Embiid. I mean, there's all these different options. But again, I just think he's so tied down to LA right now because Bronny's playing at USC, and that's his hub. Now, Golden State would be appealing because it's not that far away from LA. It's a quick plane ride. And look, the superstar players set their own schedule. Like, if he misses a game or 2, he could stay in LA and then, catch up with the group somewhere else.
But is that even a ready-made roster, Sap? To
No,
win a
it's old.
championship
I mean,
now.
look,
So is LeBron and Curry that much better than LeBron and Anthony Davis at this point in terms of trying to make a title contender?
I think they are.
So you think it's that big of an upgrade?
Yeah, because I think those 2 together would be like Messi and Ronaldo playing on the soccer pitch. I think I would be fascinated.
So they're instant title contender. If you swap LeBron, you put LeBron on the Warriors, take away, say, Clay. I mean, he's irrelevant kind of at this point. They're a title contender right now.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think LeBron and Curry would play so well off each other. I mean, LeBron could probably lead the league in assists going forward. He wouldn't this year because he's averaging, a little more than 6 assists per game. The league leaders are, at 12. But going forward, he'd average 10, 11 assists a game with Curry. Curry, God knows how many great open looks he'd get with LeBron being creative. And then you also add in Draymond Green, who's really smart offensive player. Kuminga is the player that's really grown. They're buddies now after they weren't. And LeBron's great at that stuff. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer. Because they didn't like each other earlier, but now they do.
Like Kyrie.
Yeah. LeBron is a guy who can certainly work a crowd and knows how to build relationships. He really does. I mean, I think that's one of his strengths.
Well, because he cares about what people
world.
He cares about what people think about him.
Yeah, whereas Kobe and Jordan didn't. In fact, we're more comfortable if you hated them and they hated you. They were very comfortable with that. Whereas LeBron loves to be loved. He's more like Magic Johnson. And I've said this for 20 years. His game is more like Magic Johnson's, except better than it is Jordan or Kobe's. Those 2 guys are identical. That they're like, could have been father and son. LeBron's more like Magic, except a better athlete, a better scorer, and a better defender. So it shows you how great he is because Magic's, to me, the 6th greatest player in the history of the sport. But I think he's just obviously going to stay in LA for the rest of the year and go from there. I just wonder, is he just heaved at the organization because they didn't make a move at the trade deadline? Is he? I know he doesn't like Darvin Ham. That's pretty obvious. Probably would like to see him get fired. It's kind of late.
That was his choice. That's what I wanted to kind of bring up, Seth, about the LeBron stuff, and we could talk about this every show from now until the end of time. Talk about LeBron because of the longevity and all the stuff where he ranks on a historical perspective. But part of the reason he may not get to Jordan 6 is because of his own general managing of teams. If not for that Russell Westbrook disaster, maybe they had DeMar DeRozan instead. That's a team that probably could rip off a couple of titles. And I'm not saying, DeMar DeRozan's this unbelievable player. He's a really, really good player, but he's made some bad decisions as general manager, LeBron, that maybe cost him getting to a 5th or a 6th or even a 7th championship.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the one great player, all-time great player who happened to be a great general manager was Jerry West. Like a lot of the other ones, Isaiah Thomas was not a good general manager.
Awful.
terrible, right? I think Larry Bird,
Elgin Baylor was all time
horrible.
bad.
He just was always at the draft lottery, and
He had a
every
standing
year
reservation in Secaucus. Yeah.
he sure did. And it's kind of funny because when we talk about Elgin Baylor and Jerry West, I think if you look at them as players, Baylor a little better than West, but the legend of Jerry West is great. First of all, he's the logo, and then he went on and won numerous titles with different organizations as
Yeah.
an executive. So people think of Jerry West greater than Elgin Baylor. Pure basketball player, Elgin Baylor, a little better than Jerry West. Amazingly, they never played on a championship team together because you had a guy by the name of Bill Russell who kind of took care of that. But yeah, a lot of the great players don't make great executives. Look in the NFL, right? Who is the best former player who happens to be a high-end coach in the NFL? I think it's Jim Harbaugh, who was a really good quarterback, and I think he's, we saw what he did in San Francisco for 4 years. D'Amico Ryans was a good linebacker. Mike Vrabel, who's not even employed right now, is a good linebacker. For the most part,
But none of those guys are even sniffing the Hall of Fame.
No, it's not like Tom Brady's going to, in 3 years, step down from the Fox booth and decide to coach a team.
No.
He'd probably be horrible at it.
Right.
John Elway's a pretty good executive with the Broncos, but for the most part, it's the guys that had to put all the time in, the effort in to be coaches and executives that didn't have the natural talent. Just look at baseball managers, guys that were backup second baseman or backup catchers turn out to be
that's true. And
the best managers.
Going to what we were talking about, I think 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the Bulls Ring of Honor thing that turned into an embarrassing display by the fans for booing Jerry Krause. Jordan had somebody who was, like him or not, maybe he did screw up the last one more or two more titles. He was an excellent general manager, and he picked the right pieces to put around Jordan. And had Jordan been in charge of putting the talent around him, well, we saw what he worked with while he was with the Wizards, and then when he owned the Bobcats and Hornets for a while. Not a great evaluator of talent. So maybe Jordan doesn't get 6 if he doesn't have a really competent, high-level GM.
Right. Yeah, it would have been all North Carolina guys. I mean, we saw that when he was in Charlotte.
Probably.
Even when he was with the Bulls, he was always pushing for North Carolina guys.
He probably would have traded Scottie Pippen and 8 first-round draft picks for an old James Worthy at that point.
Yeah, or Walter Davis or someone who, he grew up idolizing. So, yeah, a lot of these great players don't make great general managers. And I think LeBron can evaluate talent, but that doesn't mean he's a great general manager. Sure, DeMar DeRozan would look better in a Laker uniform than Russell Westbrook looked in a Laker uniform for a few years. And look, Russell Westbrook is doing a good job with the Clippers. He accepted the role coming off the bench, which how many times do we talk about that on the podcast yet, that I felt all along that Westbrook would be perfect as a sixth man for the Lakers because he's an energy guy and he needs to control the ball. And you can't put him out there with LeBron and Anthony Davis. There's too many cooks, spoil the broth. So he would have been perfect coming off the bench like he's doing now with the Clippers and contributing. So maybe they just didn't want to have that conversation with him. Who knows? But it's going to be fascinating to see what happens in the offseason.
That might go back to that might be back to the LeBron wants everybody to like him thing too. Maybe he didn't want to have that conversation with Russell Westbrook.
Absolutely. He's never been comfortable being the man in the black cape or the black hat, whichever term you want to use. Yep. Remember the decision. That was the first time he became unpopular, and it bothered him. I think it bothered him in his entire first year with the Heat, to the point where the pressure was so high when they got to the finals against Dallas that, that was his only bad finals performance.
Yeah, you got to have a different makeup, to like that. And some people do, but like you see, Kevin Durant obviously hates it. I think it bothers him every day that people don't like him. He doesn't understand it. There's some people who relish it though, like you said, Kobe and Jordan, the primary examples. I think all those Celtics players the Pearson, Garnett, Bird, a lot of them love that sort of stuff.
Well, they're sociopaths at some point, right? I mean, the same thing with Kobe. I've labeled guys that I consider sociopaths, and I label it in a complimentary fashion. Like Kobe and Jordan, Tom Brady. He's kind of like the sociopath down the street who looks like the nerd, but when he gets on a football field, he's insane. I think Patrick Mahomes is getting a little bit like that. So competitive.
He's like making up narratives. Nobody believed in us. Like what?
Right? Yeah. You're the
team that won the Super Bowl last year.
Right?
Team,
yeah.
Nobody
you're
believed
the best
in
quarterback
you guys.
in football by far. No one believes in you.
The Patriots did that every year, by the way. It's not. I'm not singling out Patrick
was the
Mahomes.
ringleader of that. Yep.
I mean, that's a thing that teams do. It's absurd, but
Yep. No one thought the 14-2 Patriots could win the Super Bowl. Tiger Woods was also a sociopath. Barry
Yeah.
Bonds, like you have to have that. Barry Bonds loved coming up to the plate and having 56,000 people booing him.
That's a rare. It's a
Coolest
rare
thing.
mentality. It is.
It's a sociopath. LeBron, I think LeBron deep down's a better like guy than Jordan, like a better
Oh, I'm
family
pretty
man,
sure
better
most people
father.
think Jordan's probably like a dirtbag,
Yeah,
realistically.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but that translated pretty well on the court when
right.
times got tough because he was a lunatic. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm going to be interested to see what the Lakers and how LeBron plays now. He generally doesn't check out. I mean, he's been accused of that. I remember, what was it, in 2010, his first go around with Cleveland. People talked about how he checked out of Game 6 against the Celtics in the second round when the Cavs were the number 1 seed. He had 29 points, 17 rebounds, and 10 assists in Game 6. If that's checking out, my Lord, how good would he been if he had been checked in? So
God, was that
he
a bad
doesn't.
roster? Those original
Oh,
Cleveland rosters were so bad that he
how
played
they won
with.
60 plus
I
games
don't
with
know. They were so
who
bad.
Mo Williams was the
An
second best
elderly
player on the
Antoine
team.
Jameson.
Yeah, exactly.
But
But he'll get there and he'll get competitive in the postseason, and we'll see what happens. But just fascinating that teams were calling the Lakers. Why not? They're doing their job.
yeah, I
Hopefully,
mean,
Brad Stevens even made an inquiry, because I think the coolest thing, and I know you might push back on this or you might love it. I think I wrote a column a few years ago after he won his 4th title. I said, well, the next step is to go to the Celtics to break the tie. He created the tie with the Lakers and
yeah.
Celtics both at 17 championships. We'll go to Boston and break the tie and make Celtic fans love you at some point.
I don't think he wants to be cold anymore in his life. I think
No, he's an old man.
experienced Miami, he's experienced LA. I don't think he has
Yeah.
any interest in being back in the cold
Old guys
weather.
like us, we don't want cold weather. We want warm weather.
Yeah, but well, they're sitting right now. The Lakers are at 30-26, good for the 9th place in the Western Conference. They're actually 2 games ahead of the Warriors, who are calling for LeBron James. And then if you turn your attention to the East, the Celtics are just running away with things. Sap, they are 43-12 at the break, one of their best starts in franchise history. 6 games up on the 2nd place Cleveland Cavaliers. 8 games up on the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks. So man, the Celtics have to collapse to not finish as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and should finish with the best record in basketball. It would again be a monumental collapse should they not. Next closest to them is Minnesota at 13-16, which I think has gotten a lot of people talking about the Celtics' dominance this year, and in relation to Jayson Tatum, who is the team's, I'd say, undisputed best player. And why isn't he getting more talk about for the MVP race? We heard Joel Embiid for the first basically half of the season until now. He's had the knee injury. He can't win MVP now. Now we've heard, oh, it's Nikola Jokic's to lose. Maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Luka Doncic could sneak in there. But the name we haven't really heard at all is Jayson Tatum, who's, just quietly going about his work, having, 27 points per game, shooting 82% from the free throw line, averaging almost 9 rebounds a game, almost 5 assists a game, playing really good defense. So why isn't Jayson Tatum getting more hype for the MVP this year, Sap, when the Celtics are so far and away the best team statistically in the NBA and record-wise?
He's the best player on the best team. Now, the team is so deep and talented that some people will look and say, yes, he's the best player on the best team, but look, Jaylen Brown is a dynamite number 2. Kristaps Porzingis is a great number 3. Then you've got Derek White and Drew Holiday. I mean, you have 5 guys that are all-star caliber players. So the team should have the best record in basketball, which it does. Jet, there's about 6 teams in the NBA right now that are on pace to win between 54 and 56 games. The Celtics are on pace to win 64 games. Like, they're lapping the field at this point. They're not quite the Golden State Warriors of 2015, 16 that won 72 games, but they're the best team in
they
basketball.
They had four Hall of Famers on that team, so.
True. And the Celtics have one right now. I mean, Jayson Tatum is trending in that direction, and that's about it. I mean, I know everybody makes the Basketball Hall of Fame. At some point, Drew Holiday might make it, whatever. So I think when you look at it, that the other thing that Jayson Tatum suffers from is that he doesn't really have a flashy game, right? He's just so efficient that he does everything well, right? He can post up. He takes the ball to the basket. He's got a good mid-range game. He's a solid three-point shooter, not a great three-point shooter, but there's not a lot of flash to his game. right? He's just like really fundamentally sound. Like you said, he's averaging nearly 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He's an excellent defensive player. He's just a consummate all-around player. I've always compared him to Paul George, except I think he's better now. I think he's elevated his game to being a better version of Paul George.
Yeah, because Paul George was never comfortable being the one on a team,
No,
ever.
Tatum is now becoming comfortable, and Tatum is also so damn durable. That's the part that I like so much about him. He's only missed 3 games this year. He's played more minutes than any other player in the league since the bubble. I mean, he shows up every single night to play. A quick story. My grandnephew, who just turned 11 yesterday, is a huge Jayson Tatum fan, had tickets to the Celtics game last Friday, and news was that Tatum might not play because he has an illness. Tatum went out and played great. So, and he's talked about that it's
That's
important
awesome.
for him to play
Yeah,
every
awesome. Happy
single
birthday
game.
to your grandnephew, by the way, Seth.
Yes, I got to get him to start listening. He hates LeBron.
So is that his favorite? That's his favorite player.
Oh, his favorite
Tatum?
player is Jayson Tatum. Yeah, I mean, loves him and loves Jaylen Brown too. But Tatum's his guy. And the thing I like so much about Tatum and Anthony Edwards is they're the two young stars in the league, and it's important for them to speak up on these things. Not that they're not getting into the political realm of stuff, which I love that when players do that. But speaking about the game itself, and Tatum and Edwards have said they want to play as much as they can because they know that families fork over a lot of money to go see them play, and they don't want to disappoint their young fans. That's awesome.
Yeah,
when you hear Tatum and Edwards do that. And I'm sure my grandnephew was psyched to see his favorite player playing that night.
Sure. I mean, listen, it was a couple weeks ago. The Celtics lost to a very undermanned Lakers team, and it was in Boston. No LeBron, no Anthony Davis.
Yep.
Those were expensive tickets, and you didn't
Sure.
get to see either of those guys. And players obviously deserve to take some nights off. You can't expect somebody to play 82 games. It's a lot of wear and tear in your body. But Jayson Tatum, Anthony Edwards, and I think some other guys, they know what it's like to really be excited to go to a basketball game. Maybe you get to go once a year because it's expensive, and you just really want to see your favorite player play, and how disappointing it would be if you didn't. And I think that matters to them. And so, that they give, that's the way they give back. Jayson Tatum also just gave $1 million to his foundation in St. Louis, helped raise $1 million from the NBA, had a deal with SoFi. And so really working hard on the charity aspect. I think having growing up now in Boston and being around intelligent guys like, Al Horford and Jason and Jaylen Brown and Brad Stevens. And it's really, I think he's grown up a lot, and he's starting to find issues that are important to him. I'm not saying that he was ever immature here, but I think he's becoming more, maybe worldly is the right word. And he's discovering what his niche is in terms of outside of basketball, what he cares about. And he's raising money for St. Louis, which is, his hometown, and is one of the cities that the most desperately need financial aid in the country. And I think that is something that's very near and dear to his heart, and he's working hard off the court to get that done.
And he's more comfortable now, Jet, being the spokesman for the team. He's the best player. So after a tough loss, he has to answer the questions, what went wrong. He's much more comfortable in that. I think he's somewhat shy in a sense. And I think now he's kind of breaking out of that a little bit. But back to why I think he definitely deserves to be right at the top of the MVP discussion. He's averaging 27, 9, and 5. Look, there's probably a dozen guys in the league that are having MVP caliber seasons. And one of the reasons that is because of the pace of play and the 3-point shot. Scoring is through the roof. You know what happens when there's more shots taken? It's also more rebounds and more assists because there's more points, right? So Michael Jordan, who everyone besides me and Nick Wright thinks the greatest player in the history of the sport, in his career averaged 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. Those are essentially the numbers that SGA is averaging this year. Does anyone think SGA is as good as Michael Jordan? Hell no. Look at Luka's numbers this year, 34, 9, and 9. He's averaging 4 more points, 3 more rebounds, and 3 more assists than Michael Jordan's average throughout his great career. Does anyone think Luka's better than Michael Jordan? No, and Luka's a great player. The numbers are just, the sport is on steroids, right? So you've got Nikola Jokic averaging, 26, 13, and 9. Luka, like I said, 34, 9, and 9.
Before
Those
he
look
went
like
down,
MVP numbers.
Embiid was 35 points, 11 rebounds. It's almost 6 assists.
6 assists, yeah. He was averaging more points
and 2 blocks. Okay,
yeah, he was clearly the MVP, and he was averaging more points than minutes, which really it's only been done by Will Chamberlain, who averaged,
Right.
50 points while playing 48 and a half minutes per game. So look, LeBron, Durant, Curry, Booker, they all have numbers that look like MVP type seasons.
Just for Desmond Bain is averaging 24.4 points per game
Right.
this year.
Yeah, no, it's there's how many guys are averaging 25 or more points per game this year? You can probably take a
I
quick
am
gander at
right
that
now.
25 points per
17.
game. 17. Okay. Steph Curry's unanimous MVP season, what, 2014? No, 2015, 16.
If you want to
No,
count LeBron averaging 24.8, then I'll give you
right.
18.
18. Yeah, I mean, he could do that in his sleep. The year Curry won MVP, his first MVP was 2014-15. I think he averaged 24.6 points per game.
What did Steve
And
Nash average in his MVP years?
Oh, he was around 17, 18. He was leading the league in assists. Right. I mean, like, guys would lead the league in scoring with 28 and a half points per game. I think Tracy McGrady did it. I think Jordan might have had a year or two like that. Now, forget it. Like, Jordan would be like fifth in the league in scoring if he just had an average season, because the sport is so different with the 3-point shot, the pace. So a lot of guys have MVP numbers. Why
in your mind,
Tatum,
is Tatum a top 3 candidate?
Yes, I think he is. I do. And the reason being, he shows up every night to play. He plays defense, and he's had to adjust his game so that they can adapt to Porzingis and Drew Holiday. That's leadership.
If the Celtics are indeed lapping the field, which right now it looks like they're going to do, then you should have a representative in the top 3 of MVP voting. I can't remember when that didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it may have been the case when the Warriors, the first year Durant was there, because they may have split the vote. And that was Westbrook's MVP season. See, the thing with the NBA, Jed, it's about numbers and narratives. So Westbrook won an MVP because he averaged a triple-double, even though LeBron had a better year. LeBron was better that year, just was. And Westbrook averaged the triple-double. Durant had just left, but the Oklahoma City Thunder were the 6th seed,
right? Oh, yeah, 6th seed, yeah.
Jokic won an MVP as a 6th seed. Like in football, that would never happen. Like, Jordan Love was not going to win the MVP as the 7th seed.
If the NBA was the NFL, Jayson Tatum would be running away with the MVP right now.
Right. Lamar Jackson. Jackson.
They usually give it to the best quarterback on the best team.
On the best team.
Pretty much what the NBA and the NFL MVP has become.
Right. This year, Lamar Jackson, #1 seed. The year before, Patrick Mahomes, #1 seed.
Brock Purdy was like the MVP frontrunner until like 3 weeks left to go in the season because of their record.
Yeah, and he sucks. So I mean, yeah, he's getting MVP.
It's a nice way of saying it.
Well, I mean, I wanted Trent Williams to win the MVP, the giant left tackle of the 49ers. I think he's maybe the best player in football. But yeah, so it's different in football. Basketball, guys from the 6th seed can win it. I think Tatum deserves to be top 3. Again, I love the fact that he plays every night.
I mean, they should.
Mean so
you should
much.
Put that should come into the calculation. It really should.
Of course.
As should total points. It's not just points per game. Total points, that should matter.
Yeah. I mean, you don't give out the home run crown to the guy who averaged the most home runs per game. It's the total raw number of home runs. If a guy misses 40 games, well, so be it. He may average more home runs per game, but doesn't mean he's the home run champ. The hockey, some guy might play 60 games and have a bunch of goals, but someone who played the full 82 has more goals. He's the goal scoring champ. So yeah. So I would say Tatum certainly up there. Jokic, best player in the league, defending champs. His numbers are ridiculous. Giannis has had a good, not a great year.
SGA, I guess.
SGA is in there. Luka's numbers are ridiculous, but what are they now? The 6th seed? Again, the 6th seed has produced an MVP several times.
They are the
recently.
7th seed.
They're the 7th seed, so they have to go into the play-in.
Yeah.
And look, as much as I love Luka, and I think he's the most skilled offensive player in the league, he doesn't really seem to make anybody else around him any better.
At some point, it's like, come on. Like,
yeah, I mean,
let's get going.
Porzingis' worst years were in Dallas, right? I mean, Kyrie's not played that great in Dallas, and maybe that's his problem, not, Luka's problem. Luka dominates the ball so much, it's almost like a sideshow. It's like, okay, let's go see Luka play. He's phenomenal.
But is he helping that team win? Better since he's left. I mean, he was good in Dallas, but he's gotten way better since he's been in New York.
He's like a third-tier MVP candidate himself, right? I mean, playing so well. So, no, Tatum deserves to be up there, best player on the best team. And I just love the fact that he's kind of tweaked his game to fit in with Porzingis and to fit in with Drew Holiday and just again, for the 15th time in the podcast, I love the fact that he and Anthony Edwards and SGA, I think those are the three bright young stars in the league right now, show up every single night. I appreciate that.
I agree, Sep. So we got like 3.5 minutes to go. So before we wrap up, I'll just do a rapid fire for you. Give you the guys in the 3-point contest. Give you the guys in the dunk contest, and then
Okay.
I'll read off the rosters, and you tell me who you like in each game, and then in the game, and then in the competition. So in the dunk contest, we actually do have an all-star for the first time. Would see what seems like forever. Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. He's going up against the defending champion, Mac McClung, who's not even in the NBA. He's in the G League. Jaime Jamie Jaquez, I forget how he pronounces it, junior from the Miami Heat, a rookie, and Jacob Toppin, brother of Obi Toppin from the New York Knicks. Who do you like in this set?
McClung. I mean, he's the defending champ. He's perfect for this.
That's
I don't
all
know
he
how
does.
Jaylen Brown. That's all he does. Yeah, he gets a lot of practices. Jaylen Brown's a really good in-game dunker. I don't know how creative he's going to be, but it's great to see an actual all-star in the dunk contest. But McClung's going to be tough to beat because he's very creative. He's only 6'2".
Yeah, and this is what he
those
does.
guys, those guys have an advantage over
He's a
everyone
show
else.
dunker. Yep.
Exactly.
All right, Sap. 3-point contest. Malik Beasley of the Bucks, Jalen Brunson of the Knicks, Halliburton representing the Pacers who are hosting, Dame Lillard from the Bucks, Lowry Markkanen from the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell from the Cavs, Karl Anthony Towns, who's won it before, from the Timberwolves, and Trae Young from the Hawks. Who do you got?
I'll go with Damian Lillard. He's had kind of an off year, so I think he'll kind of really avail himself this weekend. And look, he's a phenomenal 3-point shooter. I'll go with Dame.
All right, I'll take his teammate Malik Beasley. That's all he does is shoot threes.
True.
All right, Sap. And then before we wrap up, let's go to the actual game itself. Eastern Conference looks like this. Starters are Halliburton, Lillard, Giannis, Tatum, Embiid. The bench is Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, Paolo Banchero, sorry, Sap. Julius Randle is hurt. Bam Adebayo, Trae Young, Scotty Barnes. Doc Rivers, for some unknown reason, is coaching that team. And then in the West, it's Luka, Shea, Kevin Durant, LeBron, Jokic. Bench is Booker, Curry, Anthony Edwards, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Towns, and Anthony Davis. Which team wins, Sap, and which team has the better roster? I guess
the West has a better roster. The West is a better conference this year. Look at the West bench.
Yeah, the East. I mean, I like Banchero, I like Bam, and Barnes and stuff like that. But I mean, the bench, the whole Western Conference all those guys might end up in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Steph and Kawhi come off the bench. That's pretty good to start with.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis. I mean, no, the West is better than the East this year. That's why this thing is set up for the Celtics. The Celtics have to win the title this year. They need to go about 12-4 in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Sit for a week, be ready to take on a battered and bruised Western Conference champ. It is set up for the Celtics to win the whole thing.
Yeah, no
this year.
excuses.
If they don't, it's a failure. It's championship or bust. No, the Western Conference is just better. It's just a better conference this year. Look, like you said, Dallas with Luka and Kyrie Irving in the 7 seed. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so I will agree with you. I'll say Western Conference. So obviously I'll be rooting for the East and for Jayson Tatum to go back-to-back MVP of the All-Star game, Sap. That's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. Check out their website. Check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the All-Star game, everybody. See ya.